So hi everyone, and welcome to the Built for This project, where we're having conversations in this extraordinary time in the world, where we're having a common global experience. It's called the Corona crisis. For some people it's a crisis, for others it's not. And we've got ourselves, Shelley Stevens, Wynn Morgan. We're initiating the conversations, and our beautiful guest today is Fiona Jacob. And Fiona is going to speak with us about her view of why we're built exactly for these situations. And Fiona, I'm just going to turn the word directly over to you and not babble on too long.
Very cool. So when I was thinking about this ahead of the call, Shelley, what occurred to me was there were 2 or 3 really key things to think about in the Corona, let's say, lockdown and isolation. And the first thing that came to mind for me, and this was so exciting as I thought about it, was we are built for a present moment experience. What do I mean by that? What is a present moment experience? Well, back in the days before I got to see how my mind works, I spent so much time in fear and worry about my life, about things that I wish would happen or I wish wouldn't happen. And what I started to wake up to is that, as one of my beautiful mentors said, that the future is an incomplete equation. And what that really means is when we start to worry or get anxious about or follow our fear and panic thinking, we're not in that situation yet, and we don't have access to insight and wisdom in the moment, which is the biggest piece for all of us. And I think that when we're in the present moment, we can really do our best work. We can really show up. We can really rise to the occasion. And I would love to tell a story about that, because back in 2015, I was, for about 2 weeks of a 9-week breakout situation, not dissimilar to COVID-19. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night to a panicked phone call from one of my staff saying, "Fiona, you got to get in here." And I said, "What's wrong?" And they said, "Well, 3 patients in our cardiac surgical unit have died tonight in the last couple of hours. And they haven't died of their surgery, so we don't know what's going on." And I could hear the panic and the fear in their voice. And I remember my thinking taking off. My thinking went on a bandwagon, as it does, thinking, is somebody trying to murder the patients? Have we given them the wrong drugs? What happened in the anesthetic? I mean, everything went through my mind. As I got to the unit and I walked into the unit, I just felt the heat almost of these 10 pairs of eyes looking at me. And I could see that people had been crying. I could see that they were panicked. I could see that they were afraid. And I said, "What's going on?" And again, they explained to me and they said, "And these 2 other patients now are deteriorating and we don't know what's going on. What will we do?" And I remember too, Shania, I got panicked in that moment myself. And I have no idea if it was a blink of an eye or if it was 2 or 3 minutes, but I felt it well up inside of me and take over almost my body and my mind. But something beautiful happened, something unexpected, and I love this. I noticed I was afraid. I woke up to the fact that I was in panic. And what happened next was even more delicious. It was, well, fear and panic are not going to solve this situation. And then something came through me, which is like, I know what we now need to do here. And it was like this flow of action steps to take, how to take care of the nurses right in this moment. How are we going to take care of the patients that are in the unit, some of which are sick and some that are not? What is it that I need to do to keep my nurses safe? Who do I need to tell? What help do I need to get? And for the next 9 weeks, that became the beautiful nudges in every single present moment of what needed to get done. Now, to give you context, we were dealing with MERS. MERS was something, you could say, first cousin to COVID. It had a very different death rate. It had a death rate of 42%. And we found this out 2 or 3 days later when we had our patients tested and we figured out what we were dealing with. Now, what did that mean? That meant that 1 in every 2 people who contracted MERS would die from MERS. Mm. So you can imagine the fear, the panic, the messiness that we get with people when they are faced with, I might die here. And we're talking about doctors and nurses going in to care for a patient that they knew could possibly kill them. So when we started to have conversations about being in the present moment, first of all, it is okay to feel fear. It is okay to notice that we're afraid in the moment. But there's something more to be seen about that, which is, are we at our clearest when we're afraid and in panic? We think somehow that fear and panic protects us, but it doesn't. And when the staff, when the nurses, the doctors, the healthcare workers, our RTs started to wake up to the fact that being in the present moment is the best protection for them. It keeps them safe. It keeps them and their team safe, and it keeps their patients safe. That fear and worry started to dissolve. And from that came clarity, and from that came leadership, and from that came grace. And even though there were times where it was messy, and there was frustration, and there were tears, when we lived in the present moment of where we were at, what was in front of us, we woke up to who we can be, the best of ourselves in those moments. And that was the most gorgeous thing. It was the most humbling thing. And it was waking up to the magic and miracles that happen in those present moments too. And when I think back to that time, I think it was one of the most beautiful learning experiences I've ever had. And it was the most tangible, I would say, that I've ever lived my life in a granular way, of being in every single moment, feeling every single moment, being okay where I was in every single moment, and being able to rely and relax and trust that what comes to me in that moment, that clarity, that real-time responsive intelligence, knowing what to do, those nudges were the most powerful ways of being a leader at that time.
Yeah. So I'm just going to play maybe some of the role of the listener, someone listening out there. And Fiona, like, when you talk about this, it feels like a beautiful experience that you had. And maybe some people are thinking, like, people are dying. People are working long shifts and under duress. Like, how could this be a beautiful experience? What could you tell someone who's wondering that?
What occurs for me to say, Shalia, is we can have any experience of any circumstance or situation. If I go back to just my own experience, it was making up stuff, then it was panic and fear, and then it was being nudged by wisdom in the moment and following that wisdom over the next 9 weeks to see what was needed in the moment. We are talking about life and death. We are talking about nurses and doctors who walked into the rooms of patients who were afraid of dying. We are talking about nurses who got sick and were on ventilators in the ICU. We are talking about people who came to me and said, I want to go home. I'm out of here. I want to go and be with my son and my daughter. I don't want to have to deal with this. So we're dealing with the perfect human messiness, everything that occurs in a situation where we become afraid and panicked. But what I truly know is when we get beyond the fear and panic, when we actually get to see the fear and panic and the circumstance, because that is so much easier to see. We're able to see the circumstance and we're able to say, well, look, it is life and death. And look, people are dying. What we forget is that we're coming to it and we don't see the state of mind that we are coming to that circumstance with. So we're caught up in our head. We're caught up in that fear and anxiousness and panicked thinking. And I know that when we fall out of that thinking, when we see something new, when we notice that we're caught up in that fear and panic thinking, we can be okay. We can wake up to our okayness. We can wake up to a place of clarity that allows us to be with the uncomfortable feeling that we're having of fear and panic, and be in the present moment and giving the most loving care, the most divine attention to our patients or to our team. We even wake up to the grace that is in life and bring that into our caring. And I know it's possible because I've seen a team fall into that space and care from that space. And I've also seen that team from time to time getting frustrated and angry and tearful. And for that, when it's accepted as okay, and that they can be with those emotions, that it dissolves on its own. There is that space in us, you could say, that's untouched by the circumstance or situation that we're in. And that allows us to be fully present and do our best work. That allows us to show up and rise to the occasion more than we could ever even dream or hope of. And I remember, because I did a little bit of research for my master's in coaching, particularly on this outbreak. And I remember one of the participants saying to me, she said, I feel like a cockroach. Now, that might sound terrible, but she said, I feel that I have been through so much that if you were to throw a nuclear reactor explosion at me, I would survive. Because she said, I woke up to the fact of who I can be in this world and how it is possible to go through something that looks so terrible to the eyes of the world, but show up as a leader, show up with grace, show up with peace of mind, show up with freedom.
Yeah.
Did that answer?
That's beautiful, Fee. And what's coming to me right now is maybe another question that people might have is like, I've spoken to some people that they're worried about the traumatization of the people in the care working profession, in the different professions. What would you say about our built-in resilience to be in life in any crisis, before, during, after? What does that look like to you?
And I've had time to think about this because I think part of my research was also around resilience. But I probably see it in a completely different way to most, I would say, authors and teachers of resilience. So when I was reading about resilience, what people say, it's the ability to bounce back, a little bit like you fall off something and then you bounce back up to life. Or some people feel like you fall off the edge of a cliff and then you have to grapple your way back up the cliff face, and it all feels really hard and really difficult. What occurs for me around resilience is that we have this beautiful innate capacity to be okay. That there is a space somewhere in us, and I don't know if this is soul, I don't know if this is consciousness, I'm not going to get the words right, but there is a part of us that is untouched by what has happened to us or what is happening to us, that we can look towards and know the truth of, I am okay. And for me, that is no matter what has happened, whether that is, I have been in Afghanistan and I am coming back to my family, whether that is, I have been sexually assaulted or abused, or whether I am a frontline worker right now and I've seen things that humans shouldn't see, that it's kind of that terrible but it is the capacity to have perfect mental clarity and peace of mind, as I was speaking to earlier, in any situation. Because resilience, or that capacity for us to show up with freshness and aliveness and grace, is unbounded by circumstance. It's unbounded by the past. And it is the truth of freedom. And I'll share a little story because I think this might illustrate it in a better way. So this is a little while ago. This is 15 years ago. And I had not seen my very best friend for 10 years. We had gone off in life 2 different places, and we came back together and we decided we'd get together, we'd celebrate and commiserate because lots of things had happened in our lives, so we would spend some time together. And I remember going to her home and meeting her new partner, and I thought, he's a bit of a strange one, that one. And we went on to have a beautiful evening. I remember we cooked spaghetti and we had wine, a little glass of wine, and we just headed off to bed having a great time together. And just as I was falling asleep, I heard this very loud bang. And Kate came into my room and she said, "Oh, that's just the back gate. I'm going down to close it. Go back to sleep. See you in the morning." 30 seconds later, Shalia, I heard this scream that I will never forget. And it was my friend's voice. It was Kate, and she was saying, "He's trying to kill me." I thought, what the? And I ran downstairs and I stood in the back doorway of the house, and I could see Kate's partner, Paul, stabbing her. And he continued to stab her, and I shouted and I said, "What the are you doing?" I, for some reason, leaped out from the doorway, got in between the two of them, and the knife fell out of his hand, and Kate grappled back indoors on her hands and knees. Long story short, she had 35 stab wounds. The forensic pathologist said to her, and you don't really talk to forensic pathologists if you're alive, to be fair, that 2 of them, if she had not got to the hospital in time, would have killed her. She had 1 stab wound, which was 1 millimeter from her heart, and 1 which was in her femoral vein, and she was slowly losing huge amounts of blood. So not only did Kate have a physical trauma and needed to physically recover, but this was her partner. This was somebody she loved dearly from the bottom of her heart, who had attempted to kill her. Now, what do you do with that? And I remember really clearly making a decision that I was going to spend as much time as I could, because even though I didn't know about this innate resilience at the time, something in my wisdom showed up to me to say, let's be in this together. Let's walk this journey together. Let's see what we can see. Now, Shalia, it was messy. There were times when she would ring me up and say, "I've just taken some pills." There was a time when we passed by a tree that she would say, "That's where I'm going to hang myself from." So I'm not going to say it was sweet smelling and roses every single moment. It was perfect human messiness. It was depression. It was all of it. But what I remember so clearly from even those very early moments when she was out of hospital was we sat and we watched a sunset together. And it was the most beautiful, powerful space of grace and impact that had touched our lives. I remember moments where we would just dissolve into absolute laughter and joy, unbounded, unabridged. This resilience is always bubbling. It is always available. It can be covered over by our thinking in the moment. It can be covered over by the depressive thoughts. It can be covered over by upset and frustration and anger and all of it. But it cannot be obliterated because it's who we are. We are this beautiful grace and ease. We are freedom. We are unconditional love. We are lightheartedness. We are clarity of mind and wisdom. And what showed up over this journey of Kate and myself was she woke up to the beauty too. She woke up to her truest self, both physically and that that part of us that's untouched, that space that's untouchable. She woke up to that and healed. And practically a year later, she was running the New York Marathon. And right now she is contributing by being a frontline healthcare worker, because she, like me, is a nurse. And she is giving back, but from a different place, because she knows what is possible. She knows that this is unshakable. She knows that no matter what happens to us is unbounded by whatever circumstances, no matter how it looks in the moment.
Wow. So you could listen to you all day. There's so much in everything that you've said that I could probably spend a day on every single point that you've made. It's just a lovely thing to listen to. The truth of what you're seeing and how you've noticed that to be true for everyone. Yeah. And everyone watching and listening to this right now. I think that's just so, well, words wouldn't do it justice, but inspiring, humbling, and beautiful.
And truthful. And the thing is, because this is really important to me, it might seem that this is very personal. And I'd love people to see the impersonal nature of resilience, the impersonal nature of this real-time responsive being in the present moment and what it brings to life for us. This impersonal aliveness that's available to us in every single moment. Because this is not about me. I did not do any of this. I showed up and I woke up, of course, and I was in life, but this is something that comes through us into the world, all of us. And I love the truth of that.
Thanks so much, Fiona. Thank you for being with us here today and from sharing your experience and what you've seen. It's a beautiful thing. And for all the people who are listening today, we hope you heard something for yourself. And there'll be more interviews to come, and they're all going to be collected in the same place. We'll post the link underneath this video so you can go and watch more and stay in the conversation. We look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fee. Bye, guys.
Take care.